Story number 1. The Uninvited Guest. I can't shake the memories. Not after all these years. Sometimes, at night, I still hear the whispers, the faint cries, and the chill that crept into the room during that winter break of 2001. I was a college sophomore back then. Eager to have a quiet winter break, I chose to stay behind in our shared house in the suburbs while my roommates, Tom and Sarah, headed home to their families. The house, built in the 1900s, always had a certain old charm, with its creaky floorboards and large basement. Little did I know, it held a darkness far beyond its years. The first few nights were uneventful. However, as the week progressed, I began to hear strange noises, like soft footsteps and faint whispers. Shadows seemed to dart out of sight whenever I turned on a light. At first, I dismissed it as the house settling or maybe even my own paranoia setting in. But then, the intensity of these occurrences grew. In an attempt to quell my growing anxiety, I installed a security camera app on my phone and set up a makeshift surveillance system. The next morning, as I reviewed the footage, my heart raced. The camera had captured a silhouette, a young girl with ragged clothes, creeping out from the basement. She'd roam the house, pausing to look at family photos, occasionally whispering to herself. Determined to find answers, I decided to look into the history of the house. That's when I met Emily, a local journalist. Intrigued by my story, she dove into the archives. Together, we discovered a series of unsolved deaths and bizarre events linked to the house, all pointing towards devil worship and the summoning of dark entities. The most chilling discovery was about a family that lived there in the 1940s. The father, an alleged occultist, performed ritualistic ceremonies in the basement, using it as a shrine. The youngest daughter, Isabel, was said to be possessed by a demon, leading to a failed exorcism that caused her death. This little girl matched the silhouette I had seen. Disturbed but desperate for answers, I decided to confront this spirit. Emily introduced me to Alex, a young paranormal investigator. With his equipment, we conducted a seance. The atmosphere grew dense, cold air swirling around us. Then, the soft voice of a girl echoed, "Help me." In the following days, Emily, Alex, and I unearthed a series of tunnels underneath the house, connecting it to other buildings in the area. The tunnels were filled with symbols, and the walls echoed with a story of suffering, death, and entrapment. We realized that to free Isabel and the other trapped spirits, we needed to break the dark spell binding them to the house. Alex's older sister, Clara, a priestess in a local church, was our last hope. Through a grueling exorcism, where we faced unspeakable horrors and chilling confrontations, Clara managed to release the spirits, freeing the house from its cursed history. Today, as I recall those events, the weight of that winter still haunts me. The house stands, but it's no longer the same. Neither am I. The memories serve as a reminder of the uninvited guests of the past and the thin veil separating our world from the unknown. Story number 2. Footprints in the snow. Years have passed since that winter of 2002, but the events of those chilling nights still linger vividly in my mind. Even today, I can't look at fresh snow without feeling a knot of fear in my stomach. I had always loved the mountains, which is why I rented that secluded cabin, hoping to find some peace after a tumultuous year. Little did I know that tranquility would be the last thing I'd find. One morning, after a heavy snowstorm, I stepped outside to a breathtaking view, a vast expanse of white stretching as far as the eye could see. But amidst the pristine beauty, there was something unsettling. A single set of footprints led straight up to my front door. None led away. Unnerved, I called Jake, the young local sheriff, to check things out. He arrived, exuding confidence, convinced it was just some local kids playing pranks. But as night fell, things grew sinister. The soft scratching against the walls began. First, it sounded distant, then gradually, it got closer, echoing against the wooden exterior and frosty windows. Each time I mustered the courage to check, I found no one. Yet, the footprints multiplied, encircling the cabin. Desperate for answers, I reached out to Leah, a journalist from town with a penchant for unsolved mysteries. Intrigued, she began digging into the history of the cabin and the surrounding area. She soon discovered a series of unexplained deaths in the vicinity. There were whispers of devil worship and tales of souls that had been trapped and tormented. Together, we learned of a young man named Ethan, who lived in the cabin in the 1970s. A recluse, he was rumored to have summoned dark spirits, hoping to harness their power. But something went terribly wrong, leading to his mysterious death. The spirits, once invoked, never left. Leah believed that these spirits were responsible for the footprints and the eerie noises. She introduced me to Eli, a novice exorcist eager to prove his abilities. With trepidation, we decided to confront these entities. The night of the exorcism was one I'll never forget. The wind howled, and the cabin groaned as if in pain. Eli began chanting, trying to communicate with the spirits. The room grew ice cold, and a cacophony of voices echoed around us, sharing their tales of suffering and pleading for release. Hours passed, the boundary between our world and the supernatural blurred, but with Leah's research and Eli's determination, we managed to break the dark spell that bound the spirits to the cabin. As dawn broke, the noises ceased, and a calm settled. Today, as I recount those events, the sheer terror of that winter remains palpable. The cabin still stands, but I could never return. However, every snowfall serves as a reminder of the footprints that led to my door and the lingering spirits that once called the mountain home. Story number 3. The House of Memories. Even now, 2 decades later, the memories of that haunting house in 2003 remain fresh in my mind, like wounds that never truly healed. The tales of its tragic past are ones I lived, even if not in my own time. The house was a gift, an inheritance from a distant relative. Situated in a sleepy suburb, it appeared normal on the surface. But as I would soon learn, appearances can be deceiving. The first vision occurred on a quiet evening. One moment I was reading in the living room, and the next, I was thrust into a lively party from the 1920s. I could see the people, hear the music, even feel the energy. But it was as if I was an invisible observer, unable to interact. Over the next few weeks, these visions grew frequent. They took me on a journey through the house's past. A loving couple in the 40s, a family of 6 in the 60s, and others. But not all were idyllic. Some visions showcased screaming fights, tragic deaths, and even glimpses of dark rituals, suggesting devil worship. Terrified, I confided in my friend Mia, an up-and-coming journalist. She was intrigued and launched an investigation. Her findings painted a chilling picture. The house had been built on an old burial ground and was the epicenter of numerous unexplained deaths over the years. Seeking to unravel the mystery, Mia introduced me to Ryan, a young paranormal expert. He sensed the potent energy immediately. Believing that the house was trying to communicate with me, he helped guide me through the visions, ensuring I wouldn't become trapped in them. As we delved deeper, the intensity of the visions increased. We learned of Clara, a young woman from the 70s. Like me, she experienced the house's memories but got consumed by them. She became obsessed with the devil worshippers from the earlier vision and tried to recreate their rituals, leading to her untimely death. Determined to prevent history from repeating itself, Mia, Ryan, and I embarked on a mission to cleanse the house. With the aid of Hazel, a local spiritual healer, we performed a ceremony to release trapped spirits and ward off dark energies. As the ritual concluded, a wave of calmness enveloped the house. The visions ceased. Clara's tormented spirit, which had been binding the house to its tragic past, was set free. The memories of that year remain, a testament to the thin line separating the past from the present, the living from the dead. Today, as I look back, I'm grateful for the friends who stood by me. but the weight of the house's history, the memories it harbored, is something I'll carry with me always. Story number 4. The Shadowed Figure. It was in the winter of 2004, in a quiet suburb, that my life took an eerie turn, forever etching a chilling memory in my mind. The house was my childhood home, a place of comfort, but soon it would become a place of unspeakable horror. It all started innocuously enough. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to find a shadowed figure standing across the street. Just standing. Watching. At first, I wrote it off as a trick of the light or a product of my imagination. But as the nights progressed, so did its proximity. My parents left for a week-long trip, leaving me home alone. That's when things escalated. Each night, the figure drew closer, its silhouette more defined, though its features remained obscured in darkness. Panic set in on the 4th night when the figure stood at the foot of my driveway. I reached out to my friend, Emily, who was studying anthropology and had a keen interest in urban legends and local folklore. When I told her about the figure, she immediately came over, bringing along Sam, a budding paranormal investigator she'd recently met. As the three of us camped out in my living room, Sam shared stories of shadow figures, entities that have been reported in various cultures, often seen as omens or watchers from another realm. Emily then recalled an old legend from our suburb, speaking of a man named Ethan, a practitioner of the dark arts, who after his death in the 1950s, was said to roam as a shadow, seeking a home. The next night, the shadow stood right outside my front door. Its presence was palpable, cold, and oppressive. Sam, with his equipment, detected a high electromagnetic field, and we heard disembodied whispers on his EVP recorder. Determined to rid my home of this entity, Emily suggested we consult her friend, Rachel, a local medium. Rachel arrived, immediately sensing Ethan's presence and his connection to the house. Through a seance, she revealed a heartbreaking story of Ethan's love for a woman who once lived in my house. In his attempts to win her love through dark magic, he lost himself and became trapped between worlds. As we joined hands, Rachel led us through a powerful ritual, aiming to release Ethan's tortured soul. The atmosphere grew thick, the temperature dropped drastically, and the shadow figure materialized in full form, showing Ethan's face twisted in anguish. With Rachel's guidance, we communicated with Ethan, assuring him that his love had moved on and found peace, urging him to do the same. After what felt like hours, a calm settled in the house, and Ethan's shadow dissipated. Today, as I recount that harrowing week in 2004, the sheer terror remains fresh. The house still stands, and I still live there, but the shadowed figure never returned. However, every night, as the clock ticks closer to 3 a.m., I find myself holding my breath, praying that the past remains where it belongs. Story number 5. The Babysitter's Tale. The horrors of that fateful night in 2005 still cling to me, refusing to be shaken off. The quaint suburban house, the soft whir of the fan, and the incessant ringing of that cursed landline, these are memories I'll never forget. I just started college, and to make some extra cash, I took up babysitting. That's when I met the Martins, a seemingly typical family with 2 lovely kids, Ava and Leo. They had just one peculiar rule: never answer the landline. I never questioned it, assuming it was probably just broken or used for specific purposes. One night, after I'd tucked Ava and Leo into bed and settled into the living room, the landline began to ring. I tried to ignore it, but it rang and rang. It was almost hypnotic, pulling me towards it. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and picked up. "Please, check on the kids," a child's voice whispered. Confused and alarmed, I glanced at the caller ID. The call was coming from inside the house, specifically the kids' room. My heart raced as I sprinted upstairs. Ava and Leo were sound asleep, undisturbed. The subsequent nights, the calls persisted, each time with that same chilling plea. My friend Jessica, a tech-savvy computer science major, was intrigued. She set up a system to trace the call. To our shock, it was definitely coming from the kids' room, but there was no phone there. Desperate for answers, I turned to Tom, a local historian. He revealed a tragic story about the house's previous occupants. A decade earlier, there had been a third child, Lily, who had mysteriously disappeared. After her disappearance, her parents would often hear her voice on the landline, begging them to find her. They were driven to madness, believing their house to be cursed. Deciding to confront the Martins, I learned the harrowing truth. Lily was Mrs. Martin's sister, and her memory was a painful subject. The Martins believed that by ignoring the calls, they'd keep the past buried. Refusing to let Lily's spirit remain trapped, Jessica, Tom, and I conducted a makeshift seance, attempting to communicate with her. As we chanted and beckoned, the landline rang. Answering it one last time, we heard not a plea, but a simple thank you before the line went dead. The calls ceased after that night, and I quit babysitting soon after, but the echo of that small voice, lost in time, still haunts my dreams. Today, as I recount that unsettling experience, I'm reminded of the thin veil separating our world from the one beyond, and the souls that occasionally reach out, seeking closure.